over the years.
Sure.
He understands.
Nobody disputes
the American people. This is their story. They don't need a reason to understand that there's evil in the world and stand up for evil. And by the way, the Brits are the ones who taught us this.
Sure.
The importance of standing up against evil. Like, what I don't understand about any of the people you brought on, are we just then going to surrender and lit Iran?
Now, before we get into this clip, let me make one thing very clear. I am not a fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene at all, and I'm definitely not buying this sudden attempt from people like Ilhan Omar to suddenly embrace her now that Donald Trump has turned on her. Because the reality is, Marjorie Taylor Greene spent years defending Trump and helping build the very political culture that's now being used against her. So there's definitely some irony in watching all of this unfold. At the same time, if some of the things she's saying in this interview are true, then it paints a very ugly picture of Donald Trump and the people around him. So watch this clip in full, and afterward I'll break down my full thoughts, commentary, and perspective on everything that was said.
Kyriaki, welcome back to Uncensored. Let's just talk for a moment about the domestic jeopardy that I think Donald Trump is risking here. And I think it's significant. The polling is terrible. It's the first time I can remember an American armed forces at war, even if they're not calling it that, which has not had the majority support of Americans. Gas prices are skyrocketing. Food prices are and will go higher because of the issue with the fertilizer. You've got the midterm elections coming. I mean, General Kimmett thinks he's already given up that. I'm not sure that's how Trump will be thinking, but certainly all the polling again suggests that the Republicans could lose both the House and the Senate now if this continues the way that it's going. It just seems a hell of a throw of the dice by Trump, and I'm increasingly thinking he's made a massive miscalculation. What's your view?
Oh, I think this is a disastrous miscalculation. Where do you even begin? You know, there's a very significant split right now within the Republican Party here in the United States.
Yeah.
There were a lot of Republican voters who voted for Donald Trump because they believed that he really was the no foreign wars president. You might recall February 14th, Valentine's Day 2016, during a Republican debate in which Donald Trump called George W. Bush a war criminal for getting the United States involved in the war in Iraq. And now all of a sudden, it's as though it's John McCain's neoconservative Republican Party again. It seems to me that Trump surrounded himself with some people, like Tulsi Gabbard, for example, and J.D. Vance, who reportedly have been opposed to these foreign interventions, but then others like Marco Rubio, who is sort of the successor to the John McCain wing of that party. And the party and the president himself don't know which direction to go.
Well, I think I would add Lindsey Graham.
Disappointed.
I'd add Lindsey Graham into that.
Lindsey Graham.
I think he's been extremely
You're 100%
vocal.
right.
But what you're really, it's so true about the split in the party. I saw Matt Walsh yesterday from the Daily Wire making the point that almost every Republican he's been talking to is against this war. And he said, that's highly unusual when you have a Republican administration that's gone to war, for Republicans to be as against it as he is hearing personally, anecdotally. He thinks it's not showing up yet properly in the polling. But I saw a thing about enthusiasm for the midterms, and I think the Republican enthusiasm now is down to like 60% and falling like a stone, right? Which again,
that's the danger.
And I think that's the kind of quiet, that's the quiet voice there of people saying, we don't get this. This guy, the whole point of Trump was he would not take us into foreign wars, especially in the Middle East, and definitely no boots on the ground. You know, I do think if he commits boots on the ground and it goes even half wrong, as many military strategies think it could, then I think this becomes his legacy. And again, I just asked the question, and I would ask it to the president myself if he calls me. I would just say, why did you do it now? I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
I don't think I've ever seen a gathering of more spineless people in my entire life. This is just simply, it's like a vacuum, Piers. Like President Trump woke up one morning and decided to go attack Iran because Israel convinced him, as if Iran does not pose a nuclear threat, as if there's no
hang on,
imminent
but Doran,
threat.
hang on.
What would be the red line for you, Piers, to say that they're an imminent threat?
Hang on, Doran. We'll take your insult, but let me just respond. The reason people think that's what happened is because that is what the Secretary of State of the United States told everybody on camera. Just to remind you, Marco Rubio said when he was asked, why did America take preemptive action in this way? He said because another country, brackets Israel, had informed the United States they were attacking Iran, and the expected result would be that Iran would, under that incident, it would then attack American interests, and therefore they had to get in first. And J.D. Vance has also said the same thing. We're not making this up. This is something coming out of the mouths of the senior people in the administration.
12-day war, Piers? Piers, why did Trump join the 12-day war at the end of the war?
Well, the 12-day war...
Israel had been fighting alone for 11 and a half days.
The 12-day war...
Why did Trump swoop in and take out these nuclear reactors? Because he believes that a nuclear Iran poses a major threat.
Sure, and we were
Marco
told...
Rubio, Pete Hegseth, they've all said many different things.
But we were told that threat was eliminated.
The president himself said
we were told the 12-day war...
Iran has killed tens of thousands of Americans over the years. He understands.
Nobody disputes
the American people, this is their story. They don't need a reason to understand that there's evil in the world and stand up for evil. And by the way, the Brits are the ones who taught us this.
Sure.
The importance of standing up against evil. Like, what I don't understand about any of the people you brought on, are we just then going to surrender and let Iran just grow into a nuclear armed terror regime? Or does anyone, including you, have another idea of how to prevent this?
Yeah, I think the honest answer about that is that...
I didn't think so.
Well, I haven't answered.
Well, while we're doing that, I'm going to take a look at my spine here. Apparently, it's been eviscerated.
No, not all of you, but some of you.
Quite something to call General Kim spineless.
I think that there's... I see 3 with spines, including myself here. So you're one of the...
But there's nothing... Look, I don't think there's anything particularly heroic or courageous about launching the biggest military attack of modern times with the most overwhelmingly powerful military in history against Iran. That doesn't take particularly...
It's not to be a hero. Who needs to be a hero?
No, but I don't understand what the... I don't agree that there was an imminent impending threat. I think the imminent...
What would it take?
Well, let me answer. The only imminent impending thing was that Benjamin Netanyahu told Trump, we're going to attack. We now know from Antony Blinken, a previous Secretary of State, that he tried the same thing with Obama and Biden, told them he was going to attack, and then both Biden and Obama said, well, we're not coming with you. And then guess what? Israel didn't attack. And that is why people believe, when you add Rubio's comments and Vance's comments, that what happened here is that Netanyahu railroaded Donald Trump into going along with this in a way that was actually rejected by Biden and Obama, and that the actual threat, which is we're going to do it anyway, he probably wouldn't have done it anyway if it wasn't for the Americans. So, history will tell us, I guess, the answers to these questions. But it was fascinating to me that Blinken said what he said. And as to where we are now, how does it square? Surely, Doran, you must see the unbelievable risk of committing ground forces to Iran to get enriched uranium from deep under the ground, when we know how heavily protected it is, and we know how cunning the Iranians have so far been in the way they've responded in this war. I think it's a terrifying potential escalation that could lead to the deaths of many Americans, right? And I say for what? Where is the impending threat? Where is the evidence? It takes me back to 2003.
Here's the evidence.
Wait, hang on, you say I'm spineless. Let me answer you about spine. I was editor of the Daily Mirror newspaper in the UK, one of the biggest selling newspapers in the world at the time. I took on my own government, Tony Blair, the Labour government. We were a Labour-supporting newspaper. I waged one of the most ferocious campaigns against a war in media history, and it failed. And we know what happened in Iraq, because I did not believe that there was the evidence that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, or that he was about to use them, or hit London in 45 minutes, or any of that bullshit. And you know what? It turned out, very sadly, I was right. And yet, 20 years later, utter mayhem followed that illegal invasion, as I see it. So I don't think it's necessarily lacking in a spine to say sometimes that these wars are wrong. and they're on false pretexts, and that the public is entitled to stand up and say, not in my name. That actually can often take more courage than simply dropping a load of bombs on people.
Piers, we see that Iran has fired now thousands of ballistic missiles, including those that land in Israel and population centers. They fired 2 ballistic missiles towards Diego Garcia, which, yes, had they not fired them to the east and they fired them to the west, could have landed in London. The warhead on a single ballistic missile, if it's 1.5 tons, do you know what the impact zone is? It's 100 square blocks in London. What would it take for you to acknowledge that there's actually an imminent threat? We have ballistic missiles landing all over. At what, when the nuclear warhead is on the ballistic missile and it's on its way to Israel, do we then say, okay, this is an actual threat? Or do we stand up today against a terror regime that has developed proxies throughout the Middle East, that created Hezbollah, created Hamas, created the Houthis, took over the United States Embassy in Iran, has driven trucks and blown up thousands of hundreds of Marines, and have tried, MI5 has prevented 22 mass casualty terror attacks in London since 2022. What does it take?
Okay, let me bring John back in. John, your response to that?
Where do you even begin? The Iranians have been reactive to this, not proactive. You know, people watch on the news what's happening in Lebanon, in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Syria. There has to be a response. You can't just say, well, you know what, we're an existential threat to the Israelis, so of course the Israelis are going to have to bomb us. That's just not real life. I can tell you, in all the years that I was in the CIA, no matter who the Israeli prime minister was, every single time an Israeli prime minister came to Washington, no matter who the president happened to be, the Israelis would say, please help us bomb Iran. Please help us bomb Iran. Please help us bomb Iran. And the presidents always said no, until this one. I think that President Trump was duped by Benjamin Netanyahu, and now we're in a war that is not ours from the beginning, and that we cannot win. And this is another thing, too. My own experience in the CIA and at some of the highest levels of government. I was the executive assistant to the CIA's deputy director throughout the Iraq War. There's never an exit strategy. It's easy to attack a country. It's easy to overthrow a government. But then what do you do? That's the hard part.
Right. I mean, Eamon Dean, that is the reality. And that is why Donald Trump was always so vocal. I'm not going to do this. And yet here he is. He's doing it to the biggest place he could possibly be doing it with the greatest risk. And that's the bit I don't understand. I think you're one of the spineless 3, so maybe you'd like to respond to...
No, he's got a spine.
Oh, he's got a spine. Okay, great.
We're down to 2.
Okay, we're down to two spineless people.
One,
so
two,
just the CIA guy and the guy that rightly called the wrong illegal wars. Got it. Okay,
well,
Eamon.
Look, this war was going to happen by hook or crook, because at the end of the day, you know, the Iran represented not the perfectly rational, logical player in the established global order. You know, in this poker table, the global poker table, where the Russians, the Chinese, the Brazilians, the Indians, the Europeans, the Americans, you know, you see, at the end of the day, if you come to the poker table and you try to cheat and undermine everyone and to try, like, I mean, to be absolutely loutish and brutish about it, at the end of the day, you will be escorted out of the premises unceremoniously, and then you will be terminated with extreme prejudice. And this is the problem with people who don't understand that the Iranian threat was accumulatively growing stronger and more dangerous, you know, as the years progress. Again, what is so normative about Iran's politics in the region? You have to understand that Iran was expanding across the region, a region that actually contained more than 50+% of the world's traditional energy reserves. And that is a threat to the global established financial order that is backed by the dollar as a reserve currency. You cannot allow Iran to become the hegemon of the entire region, and then Iran can do whatever it wants when it comes to charging, you know, for the petrol with other currencies, undermining the status of the US dollar as the reserve currency of the world. If you allowed Iran, like I mean, to have such unchecked power across the region, is going to be tremendously, I mean, as always, President Trump said, tremendously, dangerous to the status of the United States, financial system as the financial system of the world. And add to this the fact that you cannot, basically say that Iran's politics and rhetoric towards its neighbors, it's not just only Israel. Some people always saying it was an existential threat towards Israel. Since I was a child, their entire rhetoric wasn't just only about Israel and America. It was also about Saudi Arabia. It was about Kuwait. It was about the UAE. The fact that the UAE trading with Iran for more than 40 years, and at the first sign of trouble, they threw more than 2,500 ballistic missiles and drones at the UAE. What does that tell you? It tells you basically that their entire plan, their entire military strategy was about hegemony over the oil-rich neighbors. As simple as that. They recruited so many young men, 700,000, to be parts of non-state actors, illegal non-state actors. In what world can we tolerate that? And the United States, at the end of the day, if they want, for the America First crowd, America cannot be first at home if it's not first abroad, if it's not first overseas. Because at the end of the day, the entire economic system of the United States depends on it being the hegemon of the world and the guardian of the maritime global established order, the maritime imperium.
Yeah, okay, but look, you're making an assumption that America is going to win this, and yes. I think that's quite an assumption to make right now.
Yes, it is, but because at the end of the day, it's the calculus of the firepower.
Okay,
at the end of the day, despite all the rhetoric of Iran,
we will see whether the firepower alone can win this war.
It's not just only firepower. At the end of the day, what is a victory? Arabs always say, that victory is just to be patient. Is your patience outlast your enemies?
Yeah,
and here is basically the thing is the fact that there is no economic patience in Iran anymore. My guess is their economy will collapse.
My guess is that the Iranians will have a lot more patience than Donald Trump. We shall see. We shall see.
So after watching that entire interview, there's a few things I need to say because honestly, both of them came across ridiculous to me. It felt like they were dancing around the most obvious point without wanting to actually say it directly. Now look, if some of the things Marjorie Taylor Greene said are true, and personally I think a lot of them probably are, then it paints a very ugly picture of Donald Trump. But let's stop acting confused about why he allegedly turned on her. Everybody knows this is about the Epstein files. That's the part both her and Piers Morgan kept avoiding. They kept hinting at it without fully saying the obvious part out loud. Because when somebody suddenly goes this hard against one of their most loyal supporters over transparency, people are naturally going to start asking questions. And when you add in the alleged efforts from the Department of Justice and figures like Pam Bondi to push back against releasing information, it only raises even more suspicion around the whole situation. Now, toward the end of the interview, Marjorie Taylor Greene started talking about death threats against her child. And obviously, nobody should support that. But at the same time, this is somebody who spent years contributing to one of the most toxic political environments imaginable. She helped build a culture centered around outrage, attacks, and division. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend she played no role in creating that atmosphere. And honestly, watching Piers Morgan act shocked over Trump's alleged response to the situation was probably the most performative part of the interview to me. Because this is who Trump has publicly been for years. Piers knows that. But when it comes to Trump, there's always this softer approach compared to the way he goes after people like Nick Fuentes or Kanye West. And we all know why that is. Trump brings access, headlines, and attention. So overall, this entire interview felt like two people trying to avoid saying the quiet part out loud, while still heavily implying it the entire time. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next upload.